Hi, my name is Alberto Ferreras, and I'm very lucky to be with two very talented people who created a short film called 109 Below. It's a short film that I'm not going to tell you anything, they're going to tell you. But as I just said right before we started, it makes me cry every time I watch it, and that is not normal. I'm here with Nick Martini, who's the director of 109 Below from Step Studios, and with executive producer Ben Osborne from Arc'teryx. I hope I'm pronouncing your brand properly. Did I? Rock and roll. And I'm going to ask you, the first question is about this. I don't know if we need to recap the story. I hope anyone's watching this already saw the movie. Okay, so we're going to go right into it. How and who found the story? Because this is a pretty incredible story.
Yeah, Ben on our side is sort of a collaboration. Oddly enough, Ben and I went to high school together in this region of the country, in northern New Hampshire. And as we started talking about potential ideas that would create a really compelling film, I think Ben was the first person to bring up that Mount Washington in particular is just a really unique area of the country that I think we both realized a lot of the mountain community in North America isn't familiar with if you didn't grow up there. So we thought it could be really cool to share a story about a lesser known place that had a huge impact on our life. And Ben definitely was the catalyst who put the seed of the idea in our hands. And then our development team sort of went and started searching the region and trying to find some interesting characters. And I think we ultimately came back to Ben with 2 or 3 different angles of really rich stories in the region. And we ultimately decided that the volunteer search and rescue teams up there were just super compelling, really rich opportunities to tell stories. And that was the beginning of this saga of sort of learning more and diving in deeper.
Yeah, just echoing what Nick had to say there. I was hired to work at Arc'teryx about a year and a half ago, and one of my first thoughts was, I want to tell some stories about Mount Washington. It's a place that's appreciated on the East Coast of the US, but kind of underrated to West Coast people. Being a transplant, I wanted to give it some representation. And yeah, I knew because of Steps connection back to that area, they'd be a great partner. So I sort of planted the seed, and they did a great job of, finding some really rich storytelling.
So, so it all started actually with a location. Because, when you watch the movie, and again, anyone who's watching this, stop the video, go watch the film, and then come back. But I mean, it's, I had to say, it is not normal to make me cry watching a short documentary. And the story of this guy, of Hugh Hare, who, you know, got caught, there was a blizzard, he got caught in the cave, a rescue team went out after him, people in the rescue team died, one person in particular, Albert Henry Dow. And then what came after that, uh, I tell you, this is the kind of story that I can't believe that you found more than one amazing story in those mountains. Did you know? Did you understand all the layers of the story of the bat? How do you work the actual story, and you decided on the characters that you wanted to talk to?
Yeah, and on a high level, no, I don't think any of us understood the depth we were going to uncover. We just knew that there was potentially some incredible stories within that community. But we often get tasked with this process, whether a brand wants to tell a story about a particular type of person or a certain location or an age group. We've had a lot of success working with our development team, Davey and Sarah, to do a deep dive and start to peel back the layers and see what's really there and try to find those human stories that we think will resonate with a bigger audience. So going into this, I think we knew the world was incredible, but we didn't really know what we were going to discover along the way. Prior to the production, the team took tons of calls with a lot of local people trying to uncover like what are some of those incredible characters and anecdotes that have existed over the past 30 years in the region. But even as we got into production, we still were learning so much as we were shooting. So we went in with a plan that we were excited about, but it evolved dramatically throughout the production as we had more conversations and interviews and learned more and more about Hugh's story and Albert's story. And sort of like pulling at a ball of yarn. Like the further you go, the more you find. And even as we were finishing the film, we were like still pulling at that ball of yarn. Like I think we could have, and maybe will someday even go deeper in this world. Yeah, Ben, I don't know your thoughts are there.
Believe it or not, I mean, I have this conversation often with filmmakers and writers in general, that I don't think that people understand how important it is that a movie it shows transformation of some sort, that there's either a transformation of the characters that you're presenting, or that you suffer some kind of transformation. And when both things happen, I think that then you really have a treasure, which I think is the case with your film. Let me ask you about the actual characters. Do you have any issue convincing Hugh Hurt to talk to you about this incident, or the guy, what's his name? Nick, no, Lentini. What's his real name? Yes,
Joe
the
Lentini.
rescue team, Joe Lentini. Were they okay with it, or did they say, "Listen, this is too personal for me to talk about it"?
I was sort of surprised at how open the community was, because we've actually researched and search and rescue teams in the past who are less open. I mean, sort of sensitive stuff, like a lot of victims in these situations don't necessarily want to be highlighted or draw attention to what happened to them, depending on what the circumstance was. I think Hugh is unique in the sense that he's dedicated so much of his life to helping people who have been in certain similar scenarios. He's a big advocate for mountain safety, and he's also done so much sort of philanthropic work surrounding this that I think he's used to telling his story. And I think a lot of these folks look at the opportunity to tell the stories to help educate people, to help make sure people may not make the same mistakes moving forward. So we felt very thankful that the community was so open. But I can tell you that in these scenarios, not everybody is. And I think, Benny, correct me if I'm wrong, I think along the way, I mean, we met people who weren't really that excited about talking, or even after the fact, maybe was rethinking their participation in the film. But I think the ones who are excited are the ones who are looking at it through a lens of like sharing the story can hopefully help other people in the future, and looking at it as a light on really positive work people are doing. So I felt lucky that they were so open to sharing so much of their story.
Something, and we're going to talk about the brand involvement, the brand integration in a minute, but I want to talk a little bit more about the production and the storytelling. One thing that I personally thank you for is that you didn't reunite them. I was afraid that maybe at the end there was going to be like a big hug. It's like, oh, and because I think it allows the viewer to connect the dots, which is something that is very important, because I feel like when a viewer connects the dots, then the story belongs to you. It's not just on the screen. And you did that, incredibly well, not just with the elements of the story that you share in this very short film. It's only 15 minutes, but visually, you show enough for the viewer to understand how high the stakes are in a situation like this. I wanted to ask you about the actual shoot. What percentage of the B-roll did you shoot, and how do you go about it? How do you shoot that frozen waterfall, and how the blizzard? I think that you guys, unless that's Pond 5 footage, because I saw it in the credits. How do you shoot the blizzard? Were you guys waiting for one and like, okay, hold it, looks like next week the weather is gonna be bad enough for us to shoot a blizzard in the mountain?
Yeah, I would say 97% of what you're seeing in the film was captured for the film. The only thing that wasn't captured is the archival stuff from far long ago. But we did our best, knowing the weather is pretty erratic up there, to give ourselves time to hang and see what happened. So traditionally with these short documentaries, we'd usually spend 2 to 4 days shooting. I think Vancouver, we were out there for like a full week, I think. So we saw a couple different cycles. We're fortunate enough to be up on the summit during some really, really dramatic weather. And then in addition, we supplemented some of that with more artistic recreations. We even shot some of the winter footage here in Los Angeles on one of our stages for little inserts of different things. So yeah, some of it was on location, some of it's on a stage. But we tried our best to either create weather when they're talking about things that happened a very long time ago, like what would that look have felt like? And then the modern day stuff was all shot on location by our team, like the ice climbing and the stuff up on the summit of the mountain, and the aerial footage was actually captured during that week of production out in New Hampshire.
Did you ever fear that in shooting the film you could have an incident like the one that you were narrating?
I felt like we were in good hands. We were definitely not three guys or two guys alone up on the mountain. You know, we had a snowcat and some support, and we were with a lot of expert guides. And I think we were pretty well prepared. But in general, I don't think any of us could have imagined sort of the conditions we ended up in. You know, the name of the film is 109 below, which was the temperature with wind chill that was recorded while we were actually shooting on production, which at the time was the coldest temperature ever recorded in North America, according to what we read online. So like that is something we never anticipated. That was pretty crazy, but we just tried to be careful, like go outside, shoot for 2 or 3 minutes and run back inside. Because that's how quickly, you know, I think we're all sort of like white-nosed fingertips, like after going out for a couple of minutes. You got to be careful.
That's interesting. I hope you were wearing Arc'teryx garments because, and you know something, I do have one more question about production, but I want to ask. I think the brand is very humble, you know, in terms of its integration into the film, in terms of, you know, logos. You just see Arc'teryx at the beginning, you see it at the end. I don't know if anybody's wearing the clothes. You certainly don't see, they're not trying to sell. My perception, and the reason why I love this particular integration so much, is because you feel that a brand that understands so well what's at stake for a climber, which I am not, probably knows what they're crafting, you know, what their product is. And I wonder if what Ben can tell us about that. How do you guys figure out how to bring the brand into the movie?
Yeah, I think that our number one goal is to connect people to the outdoors and to the mountains. And we believe the way to do that is by being as authentic as possible and sort of realizing that having the brand show up too in your face over and over again can take away from some of that authenticity. And that striving for authenticity bleeds into other parts of the production process, such as hiring production partners who have a personal connection to the area and working with characters who have the same goals as us as far as promoting safety in the mountains, something that Arc'teryx strives for, something that Search and Rescue, Mountain Rescue Service, the group that we worked with. So I think it all comes from authenticity and wanting these to stay as true to the story as possible and the lives that these characters live.
What was there ever any push on the company side? Because you know there's always a few executives, and there's the one who's like, "Ah, you know, I don't see any logos there. You know, can you park the car like right behind him?" You know, I was truly amazed that you guys didn't push harder for that. But in my humble opinion, I think you achieve exactly what you wanted to achieve.
Yeah,
The
I think. Oh, I was just gonna say, I think in the end, it's more powerful if we can send the message we want to send without having to put our logo in the consumer's face.
I think you're right. I think it was brilliant. I don't know if the copy that I saw doesn't have lower thirds. Is that intentional? Is the final film going to have lower thirds on the characters when they talk?
No, we opted to try to remove as much text from screen as possible. Everyone sort of introduced themselves and gave their name. We thought that was enough. And luckily, we only have 2 or 3 voices throughout the film, so it's pretty distilled. I I think those type of treatments can help when there's a lot of characters, but ideally in these experiences, we really want people just to fall and be immersed in the visual storytelling, and avoid text where possible. So hopefully we got away with it this time and it still made sense to everybody. But yeah, no, the final version of the film won't include any other titles on screen.
I can tell you that I loved it, that I will probably quote you guys and I will use your film to convince clients in the future to let me get away with it, because I agree with you. The fact that there were no lower thirds, it just made it even more authentic. It didn't matter what their names were, because I think the story had so much to tell us. It could have been anybody. I wanted to take a moment to praise your crew, because I think, I mean, first of all, how big was it? Because the interview footage is gorgeous. And sometimes it looks like you use, like, 5 cameras to shoot those interviews. They're pointing in every direction, very interesting framings. And so tell me a little bit, and also the editor, your editor, Joseph Fletcher, who did such an amazing job leaving those dots for us to connect in our minds.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. The crew was actually fairly small, but it's people who come from a really visually driven background. So there's a lot of people who came from the commercial industry more so than the documentary world, at least behind the camera and lighting. But I think the crew, it's probably about 10 of us in total, including our producer and Ben on site, and then maybe 8 person on the production side between like sound, camera, lighting. So pretty contained, sort of like elevated docu crew, but we really wanted to have this feel more like a feature film than a verite documentary. So you notice there isn't a ton of like handheld verite work. It's a lot of really composed compositions, either on sliders or on gimbals or aerials, giving it a bit more of that feature film look and feel, which is just sort of a stylistic preference. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it, but we thought for this story, the location and the magnitude and the gravity of the story, it could be nice to lean into a really cinematic look and feel. So visually, I think the small team was able to deliver a lot on that front, given how tight the crew was. And then to your point, yeah, we tried to make it feel a little more unique too, like really bizarre sort of interview compositions and stuff that takes you out of just like the normal talking head you always see in a basic documentary. And then all the way through to post-production, Joseph Fletcher, who edited the film, did an incredible job alongside our story producer, Sarah Stewart. Sarah focused a lot on the storytelling, sort of like narrative arc that Joseph was able to put in place. And then he's a really great visual storyteller too. And so much of this film is about just immersing you into this crazy world, that we didn't want it to just be people talking the whole time. Like sometimes it's got to breathe and you got to sort of melt into this, bizarre, unimaginable world, as Joe Lentini would say. So yeah.
The how long was the post-production process?
Quite long, for a short doc. I think ultimately probably like 4 months, maybe something like that. We weren't always on. Like some of these doc projects we like to like step away from for a week or two and then go back in if there's the flexibility. Kudos to Ben for scheduling this and shooting it far before it was due. Sometimes we have to shoot docs and get them out for a marketing campaign like 2 or 3 weeks later. I think we were very lucky to have time to really marinate and do this the right way. And then we even went back and shot some additional interviews and pickups during the post-production process to fill in the gaps. So we felt very lucky to have some freedom in terms of timing to do it right and make sure that everyone was excited about what the final product looked like.
One more thing that and again, I already, I confess that I love the movie and it has made me cry repeatedly. Something that I really like about the film is that I feel like social media is full of videos of action sports, of, young kids doing crazy stuff. And you guys did a movie that has all the attributes of one of these, action videos or extreme sports videos, but it actually does the opposite. It makes you, it does not encourage irresponsible behavior, quite the opposite. What's been the reaction, to that?
think a little bit TBD in terms of like where people, but I think ultimately like we wanted to send a positive message. Like it's the playing in the mountains is dangerous, and there's sometimes to glorify that with big action films. And there's sometimes to also use this opportunity to educate people and make people stop and think a little bit. I would say I'm very impressed by Ben and the Arterix team for wanting to prioritize story in a lot of their films. And I think we've all been conditioned over the past 20 years to watch some incredible action films, and those absolutely have their place. I know the brand's been behind a lot of those films as well, but to dedicate some time and resources to really human driven stories that maybe aren't highlighting the tier one athletes and their exploits, but really going to find some stories that align really well with the brand ethos, I thought was really impressive from the brand side of things, hearing Ben and his team talk about their desire to share meaningful stories, which some other brands are doing, absolutely, but some are less concerned about that. So kudos to Ben and his crew for wanting to tell, some of that has. That's awesome.
Okay, so Ben, let's get real now. How do you measure success with a movie like this? And what is the distribution? What is the plan for this film?
Yeah, I think just to talk a little bit about, expand on what Nick was saying, I think there's different ways to inspire people, and there's those action-centric films that we will always support as a brand is one way, and then this emotive storytelling route that we've done in 109 Below is also a really important way for us. I think both have the ability to, like I said, connect people with the mountains, inspire people to get outside. Um, as far as our distribution and how this will come to life, I think first of all, we really will value in-person screenings of all of our different films. And I think this one in particular, watching it in person, being able to be in this like highly emotionally charged sort of mindset around other people, I think is really valuable and really powerful. I got to experience it myself at the premiere in New York City. And we'll sort of work with all production companies that we work with to find the best festival placement for it. Lead those in-person screening experiences and let everything cascade down from there. We have a number of brand events where the film will show at, and not put too much pressure on an online release and allow it to sort of get out into the world through those in-person experiences.
In terms of very often, and maybe, and I'm curious, what your brand, how the brand feels about sales. Do you feel like, a film like this would have an impact in your in marketing or sales, or is just a totally soft approach? It's like we're putting these messages out there, and let it be.
Yeah, I think that I'll compare sort of our take on it with maybe my childhood experience growing up and being connected to the outdoor industry. I think the most powerful connection I had to brands was through the authentic content that they put out, whether that was, a snowboard movie where a rider was sponsored wearing a certain outfit that I wanted. And I think that sort of translates to what we're doing here. We want people to feel connected to what we're trying to do as a brand and the people and organizations that we're trying to support. And hopefully that drives them to make decisions that support our brand. And we want it to be a good relationship.
Is there something that I haven't asked you that you would like to talk about? Don't be shy.
No, I think that for me, I think this project has just been a perfect example of the value of really having a connection to a place and a strong working relationship between brand and production company. I think this model of us sort of planting the seed with Step Productions and them diving deep and just an open conversation about what makes a good story is what kind of led to the success here.
Nick?
I would just like to say I really appreciate brands who are continuing to invest in telling meaningful stories, and I do think while some of these films may be less focused on converting a purchase of a specific product, I think it does incredible work for building brand equity and connecting with an audience in a much deeper way. And I just want to give kudos to Arc'teryx. I mean, even the event they hosted to premiere this film in New York was just so incredible, to get a whole community together of people who may know this world and people who have never seen anything like this in their life, and give them an opportunity to experience some of these stories. I think is just a really, really cool way to interact with an audience as a brand. So I hope more people continue to support these initiatives. As much as I love working with Arc'teryx, I will say I've seen other brands also have the passion, but so many brands don't have interest or don't understand it. So I think some of these projects can hopefully get people excited to tell more stories like this across any type of category of brand. But it's been really fun for us as filmmakers to have brands be interested in telling great stories. So I'm excited to do more of it. And I think seeing what Ben and his team is currently doing is very inspiring. So yeah, it's been fun.
Well, as a viewer, I can tell you that I don't see myself climbing a frozen waterfall anytime soon. But if I did, I would certainly be wearing Arc'teryx gear. I'm not kidding. I'm absolutely, there's a line in the film where I can't remember the name of the character, of the person actually. He says something so simple and profound, like when you're up there, you lose a mitten and you're screwed. That's it. So, how important is that mitten is properly stitched and well designed, and not just pretty, but it serves a function. So I think that it's a win-win, and it's certainly a film that I enjoyed tremendously.
Absolutely. Again, I'd put a lot of emphasis on how important Sarah Stewart was in this process. An incredible storyteller. She's won an Academy Award for the Best Short Documentary last year, and she's just such a talented story producer. So kudos to her for like really doing the deep dive early on in the story and giving us a great foundation to go execute on. So kudos to her. Cam Riley, the cinematographer, has been a super long time collaborator of mine. Obviously, he created some really, really beautiful images for the film. And most of all, thank you to the community around Mount Washington who gave us really generous access and their time. These are all volunteers. They do not get paid to work on the search and rescue team. They're volunteered to be in the film. They're just like, it's such incredible individuals. So everyone in that community was so welcoming. So thank you to everybody from out there as well.
Have you had any screenings in Mount Washington? Have you and Joe seen the movie, and Alexis, have they seen the movie?
Yeah, so Joe and Hugh were able to join us in New York City at the premiere at our event there, our brand campaign launch where we showed the film, which is amazing. Hugh actually gave a speech as well about what he's doing in the world of prosthetics. And one of the big goals of this film for us as a brand was to eventually give back to the volunteer search and rescue organization that we worked with. So we will be premiering it at Ice Fest, which is a ice and rock climbing event that happens every year. I think it's at the start of February in the Mount Washington Valley. And so there'll be a premiere on, I think it's Saturday, February 3rd there. That will be for the community. All ticket proceeds will go back to Mountain Rescue Service. And yeah, we're really excited about that one. Joe will be there to present the film.
Well, if I'm allowed to say one more thing about your film that I love is, we often say, oh, something good has to come out of this tragedy, but we don't always actually see it happen. And thank you so much for showing us that. It's quite a journey. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thanks, Alberto. It was fun
Thank
to
you.
chat.
Yeah, that was great to chat. Thanks so much.